Let's get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time. And take a listen to this answer.
Say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walz brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or fix a truck.
Tim Walz thought smiling for cameras was enough, but Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk came in swinging and wrecked that image. They exposed broken schools, rising crime, and fake progress. It wasn't just shade, it was a full takedown. They showed he cares more about headlines than real work. Now the truth's out and it's stealing all the spotlight.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools.
I'll tell you one thing, the most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy, well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not able to stand up for themselves.
When Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk see fake leaders, they don't stay quiet, they don't wait, they jump in with facts flying and cameras rolling. And when it was Tim Walz, they brought enough fire to burn his whole image down, not out of hate, but because failure that loud demands to be exposed.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This is a sacred trust. In the spring of 2005, Walz walked away from that sacred trust, abandoning his post when he learned of an upcoming Iraq deployment. This is cynical Publius saying this. He is a coward. According to this Twitter feed, he is a quitter. And every veteran I've talked to thinks that Walz is close to betraying the country by doing this.
Megyn Kelly looked at how Tim Walz was being sold and knew right away something didn't add up. He was acting like a regular guy, but it felt fake. Megyn's been calling out phony leaders for years, and she could see right through him. Nothing about Walz felt real. It was all scripted, polished, and full of recycled fake charm.
What Walz did is the moral equivalent of a mother dropping off her 5 preteen children at an orphanage in the dead of night so that she could run for Congress. Yes, it is that bad. This was more than just abandoning troops. It also reflects a major personal deficit in his character and makeup. By the way, this is written by a veteran.
Megyn ripped off the fake image, fast showing how Tim Walz talked unity, but led with confusion and blame, always pointing fingers like a kid, blaming the cup for spilled milk. Charlie Kirk hit straight at the money, calling out how Walz drove businesses out with high taxes and crazy rules while thinking government jobs counted as growth. Then they both exposed how he handled COVID like a fear show, not science, shutting down small shops while big companies got special treatment. Megyn said this wasn't safety, it was politics in disguise.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my...
Charlie showed how Tim Walz used data when it suited him, then hid it when it didn't. Hospitals were exaggerated. Policies were for headlines, not help. He called it fear, not leadership. Walz froze instead of leading. Megyn added how he loved photo ops, always posing like a hero during protests or vaccines. But when cities burned and kids suffered, he vanished. Charlie also exposed how Walz waited too long during the George Floyd riots, letting chaos take over before finally calling in the guard.
Tim Walz then lied about it to run for Congress and acted as if he was on the front lines. And people in Walz's battalion died. People under his supervision died. If Master Sergeant retired Walz could not be trusted to fulfill his duties he had to his soldiers, his unit, and his nation in 2005, how can he be trusted to be vice president in 2025?
Instead of facing the chaos head on, Charlie said Walz just waited around hoping someone else would clean it up so he could jump in later and take the credit. All that delay showed he cared more about politics than people. Then Megyn went after his school record, reminding everyone he used to be a teacher, but let scores crash and gave kids more screen time instead of real help. Then they dragged him on culture too, Megyn said. Walz always plays it safe, trying not to upset anyone, but ends up standing for nothing, acting moderate while quietly backing extreme moves behind that soft Minnesota tone.
What kind of bullshit is that? No, you don't, sir. We don't lie about military service we didn't actually perform, like going to war. We don't steal valor by saying that we had a higher rank in the National Guard than we did. We don't run around saying we served in Operating Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan when we didn't. We don't stand and watch somebody say that we were in combat in Iraq when we weren't.
Charlie took aim at how Walz followed the party line like a script reader, not a leader. He said Walz didn't run Minnesota, he just obeyed donors. Talking points and trendy progressive demands mask the kids close the churches, keep the liquor stores open, and act like crime doesn't exist. He did it all without question. Charlie called him not a governor, but a Democratic brand manager in snow boots. Then Megyn jumped to public safety, showing how police were drained, discouraged, and pushed aside. Crime kept rising, and no one in charge seemed to care. She pointed out how weak policies led to real danger for people Walz claimed to protect. Charlie added that Walz didn't just fail to stop the mess, he helped make it happen. Their takedown hit every angle: leadership, money, schools, safety, and culture, and they didn't even need to shout. That's what made it hurt more. It was calm, sharp, and straight to the heart.
Podcast attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy. Well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms, and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men.
They crushed the spin, ditched the excuses, and left behind a weak leader who talked big but waited for others to act. Megyn promised to keep exposing fake leaders. Charlie said he'd keep revealing the lies. Then they went after Walz's climate plan. Megyn said he talked like a green energy ad, while people back home froze and roads crumbled. It was all show no results.
Yourself from that clarification. And then here's, two pieces of this that are really... I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak like we do. I speak like regular people.
Charlie broke down the budget like a fed-up teacher, showing how Minnesota took in loads of tax money but still had nothing to show for it. He called it reverse alchemy, turning gold into potholes, and joked that progress only showed up in photo ops, not in real life. Then Megyn exposed the mess in healthcare. Walz talked big about fixing things, but all he delivered was a maze of delays, closed hospitals, and growing piles of paperwork, proving once again that promises are easy, but action never showed up.
The fallout continues for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, I'm a knucklehead, was he got confronted with his latest lie that's been unearthed. There's a long list of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know, whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government.
Instead of fixing healthcare, Megyn said, Walz created the only system that made people feel worse just by watching it. Doctors were frustrated, patients stuck waiting, and the whole thing spun like a hamster wheel going nowhere. Then Charlie took on immigration, calling out how Walz hid behind soft words with no clear plan. He pushed empty gestures like sanctuary cities while ignoring the pressure on struggling communities. The people in St. Paul stayed out of touch, and Walz just kept building a bridge of promises that led straight into nothing.
Again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This took chutzpah. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record. He keeps doing this. Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel.
After that, they circled back to Walz's media playbook, and this time, Megyn didn't hold back. She dragged his whole strategy into the light, from the hand-picked interviews to the sugar-coated news pieces where no real question ever made it through. Unless the cameras were soft, the lighting was perfect, and the questions came with a script. She said Walz didn't just avoid hard questions. He built a whole wall around himself made of press agents and friendly headlines. She joked that his version of transparency was standing in front of reporters and reading a speech written by 6 staffers he couldn't even name, and then acting like he just delivered the truth. Charlie jumped in saying, Walz treated media like a college group project. He did. None of the work showed up at the end, read a few lines, and still wanted the A grade. But while he played that game on camera, the real world behind him was falling apart. Teachers were burning out, small business owners were giving up, and no one from his circle seemed to notice or care because they were too busy polishing his next headline.
Disgusting, repulsive, and reprehensible examples of abandoning one's unit, of turning back on country and instead for own personal comfort and safety that we have ever seen in politics. And it's far worse than I even think people are describing it. It is worse than stolen valor. It is abandoning your fellow soldier.
Instead of stepping up when families needed answers, Walz chose to stage another carefully controlled meeting with folks who already echoed his views. Parents were pulling their kids out of public schools desperate for real change, but all they got was a roundtable full of nodding heads and recycled buzzwords. Megyn wrapped things up by going after the deeper issue, a whole mindset of settling for less under Walz's leadership. She said mediocrity wasn't the exception, it became the rule. Every mistake was spun into a transition. Every crisis was dressed up with a press release that blamed systems, not the man in charge. She didn't call it a political debate. She called it a leadership vacuum, a moment where someone was supposed to show up but never did. Charlie didn't just agree, he doubled down, saying this wasn't about red versus blue. It was about getting real things done. And under Tim Walz, the only thing that grew was the list of excuses. Results disappeared, replaced by carefully packaged failure. Optimism was drowned in feel-good speeches, and any sign of strong leadership was buried under layers of fake empathy. Staged claps and empty promises meant to sound like solutions but delivered nothing at all.